Now, the question that the media has highlighted or posed is a little bit of a hyper amplification of the efforts and the science claims that the Tata Memorial has actually shown, talking about a potential hope in terms of a magic bullet. This is a very relevant topic for us to discuss at this juncture when the country is asking so many exciting questions on have we cracked the entire puzzle.
Scientific literature could get rigorous for everyone to follow, and I think which is where we would require someone like yours help to decode the whole thing.
I think it's very important for people to know that copper alone attempted to be taken can be detrimental in cancer patients. And in fact, a lot of the new therapies are trying to use copper as a target to chelate copper so that they are able to reduce the cancer cells activity and its growth by inhibiting copper. Again, I wanted to re-emphasize that yes, resveratrol has been there for a very long time. Its potential in prevention of cancer has been explored and proven to certain extent, like in these case control studies.
Good morning, Dr. Vishal. How are you doing?
Namaste.
Just yes, namaste. Just a short introduction to Dr. Vishal's background. That he's an oncosurgeon and he has quite a reputation preceding him throughout India. Not for just his oncosurgeon capabilities, but all the other things that he has been doing for India, leading various aspects of science and biotechnology throughout the nation. So alongside all these, Dr. Vishal is also a part of the cancer control committee of Karnataka state government, and he's also part of the vision group, which is again part of the Karnataka government. And I think he's using all this experience to form a ecosystem around cancer. And that brings us to the topic again today, that the news channel has been talking about the new Tata Memorial drug for the cancer cure or prevention. That claim is yet to be established perfectly. But again, how many times this has happened in past 1 decade, that we have had a lot of news channels talking about cancer treatment, and we are here to share some insights about that from Dr. Vishal. So first of all, the drug is a resveratrol copper combination, as they have claimed, and there's a lot of talk around cancer prevention or cancer cure. So if you can help us understand that a bit, Dr. Vishal, since you have been following
Thank you,
this thing.
Darshit, for inviting me for this discussion. I think broadly today, when we look at this news, it comes as a very welcome news. There are some important aspect to this. I think Tata Memorial and I think TIFR have put together some efforts towards advancing of cancer research, towards trying to making an effort to improving outcomes in cancer. At the same time, giving a cost-effective solution to a problem that is been grappling millions of Indians every year. So if you look at the Globocan data today, about nearly 14 lakh new cases are being diagnosed in India per year. Almost one third of them are diagnosed in very advanced stages where nothing much can be offered at a point. Now, the question that the media has highlighted or posed is a little bit of a hyper amplification of the efforts and the science claims that the Tata Memorial has actually shown, talking about a potential hope in terms of a magic bullet. I think there are key a couple of points that we would need to discuss to understand this area, and I think that's something that we both should be able to bring about. And I'm glad that you, as a bioinformatician, a person working in the area of microbiomes, working in the area of uh, genetics and work understanding in the area of system biology, longevity, has taken up some of these areas, because this is a very relevant topic for us to discuss at this juncture when the country is asking so many exciting questions on have we cracked the entire puzzle and where do we stand. So I would broadly like to break this discussion and interaction under 5 headings. What is resveratrol? What is this copper? What is the combination of both of these? How does this chromatin thing work that they have postulated? And finally, does it prevent cancer or does it cure cancer? I think if we are able to address these four things in a proper evidence based approach, maybe quoting some of the relevant articles, that should give the clarity to the audience and give them the necessary information by which they'll be able to take up better informed decisions in order to make choices for any of these supplements today. I think that should be the beginning of our and foundation of this discussion, that will be able to benefit, I would say, millions of people who today are searching for this thing and may have to do better informed choices rather than actually go through empirical data and experiment with some of these medications.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I mean, scientific literature could get rigorous for everyone to follow, and I think which is where we would require someone like yours help to decode the whole thing behind the science of this drug that is being talked about and separating it from the hoax or the noise that is being created about it in media. So I think you rightly broke it down. First of all, we need to understand what are these two elements that they are using as a combination of drug, right? So resveratrol, the first one is resveratrol. Resveratrol has been around for a very long time now throughout the scientific literatures, with papers starting as early as 1970s and 80s. So we know a lot of potential mechanisms of resveratrol that has been involved. Obviously, there have been talks around the bioavailability and the ability of resveratrol to stain the tissue or blood, but we can still find some very relevant and good papers that has shown some of the effects that resveratrol has on the cancer mechanisms, on the immunology, and the immune system. So if you could help us understand that a bit about, as an oncosurgeon, how you have been understanding resveratrol in the cancer and immune system effect, and how have you been using it in your practice if you are using it?
I think my basic understanding of resveratrol, as you rightly pointed out, it's been there for almost half a century now. And I would say that before the name resveratrol, that has existed for half a century, it has always existed in nature for time immemorial. Resveratrol has always been there. Okay, just the name resveratrol came in about half a century back. Now, to put things in perspective for us, what is resveratrol? Resveratrol is a polyphenol that is naturally occurring and found in grapes and in extracts like grape extracts like wine and others, which is where the proponents of wine say that wine is good for health because of this component called the magic resveratrol, which actually is known to be an anti-inflammatory agent, anti-aging agent, anti-cancer agent. And I think that's the reason resveratrol has been in the news for many years now. I think nothing new, and I think that's what the audience should know, that resveratrol is a natural plant extract found in naturally occurring substances like grapes, which has been extracted because its concentration in some of these has been so low that it takes a lot of, maybe thousands of grapes to make one single capsule of resveratrol. And that is why, because of the scarce nature of its availability in grapes or other components, it is told that now this is made in as a supplement a few decades back. Would you want to add something more to it, Darshit?
No, I think this should be enough for a basic understanding of resveratrol. But as we talk about how it has been used in cancer, especially in the context to the Tata Memorial study and others who have found similar effect. But before we delve into that, a bit about copper as well, because we know copper to be a trace element, which is again quite often found in body. In fact, these days it's quite common to have copper infused water as well for the various health benefits that are being claimed. So copper is again an important trace mineral, but using it in context of cancer, especially this paper which has been talking about the oxidative stress being generated. So has copper any known effect around that? Is it able to generate that oxidative effect? Is the question that we would like to answer.
And I think this is where I am especially cautioning people on inadvertent, non-prescribed, over-the-counter use of copper is very dangerous. I think it's very important to have medical advice before you touch copper, because there are two aspects to it. copper per se, like you said, increases oxidative stress. We don't want our body to increase the oxidative stress in general for a person who's normal. Okay, copper is a trace element, and its effect in the body is very, very crucial as a coenzyme in order to make a lot of the body functions, immune functions work. But when it crosses a critical level, it causes copper toxicity, which is very harmful to health. The second important aspect of copper in cancer specifically is copper is known to promote angiogenesis and increase the cancer cell growth. So cancer cells use more copper than normal cells. So it's a paradox that we are talking about a combination of copper and resveratrol, which is a mechanism which has to be proven very strongly. Like I said, supplements in small ranges are important, and this mechanism would need to be proven. Now that the rat models are showing some proof, we would need to go a little more deeper into the aspects of molecular mechanisms, the proteomics, the pathways, to understand what is the drug interaction between resveratrol and copper to mechanistically stimulate the immune system, because it should, in the human trial, that is the one, that answer that we will be waiting for. Because like I told you, I think it's very important for people to know that copper alone attempted to be taken can be detrimental in cancer patients. And in fact, a lot of the new therapies are trying to use copper as a target, to chelate copper so that they are able to reduce the cancer cells activity and its growth by inhibiting copper. So it's very important to understand that copper in cancer is a pro cancer element, which needs to be cautiously taken in this particular methodology. And inadvertent or indiscriminate use of copper in a cancer patient may be detrimental and should be sought with a lot of caution, Darshit. And that's what the audience would need to be understanding. And this particular study has definitely opened a great potential for it as a coenzyme, as a potential, and its dosages as a micro element, as a micro trace element, is very beneficial. And I think that is what we need to do. And my fear sometimes has been is like in COVID, when steam got misused, something as simple as steam got misused because of a message. We don't want people to indiscriminately start using copper and start popping it up every day to think that that's something that's going to, in its individual capacity, change the game of cancer. And that's the important message I want to give here.
Absolutely, that's where I think clinical evidence comes into maximum effectiveness, because the dose dependent nature of different elements is entirely different, and the right dosage has to go with the clinical trials that have followed. But I think, again, before we go into the Tata Memorial clinical trials that they have published in the year 22 and 23, a quick understanding of how this combination would work. For example, the paper has claimed that around the use of copper, or the potential mechanism of action, is that the oxidative stress is going to destroy the chromatin material coming from the tumor cells, right? So that is the proposed mechanism. Now, before actually understanding what is chromatin and how it is affected, first we need to understand that, as we have talked, resveratrol has been around for 50 years. Now, resveratrol is also known to exert this kind of an effect of an oxidative stress at a dosage of 5 mg a day, which already a paper has shown back in 2015. I'll just pull up that paper while you're answering that question.
Sure.
Right? So it has already shown. So can we have a question around, like, is it copper induced oxidative stress that the Tata Memorial study is talking about, or is it something that resveratrol is already known to do? So what is exactly the role of copper in this combination? That needs to be well understood, I
So
guess.
I will go and prescribe to the theory. Again, it's just theory. But I would be safer in telling that in this theory, it is resveratrol that they are highlighting, and copper continues to be the respectful coenzyme, which has to work together. This is the kind of a combination that may actually be doing the aspect of the efficacy or the preventive aspect, which is what could be the work around it, and not necessarily the copper overriding the resveratrol. And that's very important to understand, again, because of reasons that I said, that look, indiscriminate use of copper could promote the cancer tumor angiogenesis, could be detrimental to copper toxicity, and may not serve the purpose of a cancer kill, but may create more harm than good. And that's why I would like to say that the due credit has to be given to resveratrol, with the coenzyme, which is the copper, which is a trace microelement that has to be played there. Copper cannot be the macro element and resveratrol the micro element. And that's why the importance has to be re-emphasized on resveratrol.
Absolutely.
And
That's
Darshit, to add to this, I think for the audience, what is this chromatin? Chromatin is nothing but a part of the DNA which holds with it some key proteins, correct? And I think what the people need to understand is this story about the chromatin being released after a cancer kill is very well known with chemotherapy agents, very well known with radiation, and is also now being shown in this particular thing, but it's something that is not new, it is well known. Now, what I would like to, for the sake of simplification, address here is that whenever a cancer cell dies, the nucleus of the cancer cell, the cell contents are released in the blood. When the cancer cells contents are released in the blood after its death, and those contents are part of them are the DNA and the chromatin, which are released, they can be picked up by the immune cells to actually try and get activated. Now, what are our immune cells? We call them lymphocytes, specifically something called T lymphocytes. The chromatin that is released, the DNA that is released in this particular blood is being picked up by the immune cells, and they start understanding that, okay, they have some secret code inside this particular DNA, some proteins which are specific to cancer, which are like the Da Vinci code, which are like the secret code that the patient has, okay, the tumor has. And understanding this, the immune system gets activated and says, now I know how to find the culprit in the midst of all the good cells. And that is what immunotherapy is about. That is what immune system is about. And that is what today's talk about activating the immune system is about. So all the talk that we are hearing today, from Nobel laureates to talking about the world's best teams working about immunology, has been the philosophy of activating the immune system rather than killing the cancer cell. So here we are talking about a combination. There's one aspect that kills the cancer cell. There's one aspect that actually improves the efficiency of the immune cells to identify and kill the cancer cells. So there are two aspects involved in this, and which is where I think the combination of this would need to be looked at. And most studies, if you look at immunotherapy today, also are talking about them as adjuvant. That means most clinicians today, when they give immunotherapy, also give a little bit of chemotherapy, because they say that when the cancer cells are killed, the immunotherapy seems to be working more synergistically better.
right. No, I think that's very well explained. I think I also got a lot of clarity while talking to you about it for sure. Now, moving to the actual studies that they have published, right, as Tata Memorial. So, as I said, that people have been claiming again on their respective videos that this is just a mice study, it's just a mice study, but it's not just a mice study. They have actually published two trials, one in 22 and one in 23. So I think that 22 might be the phase one, looking at the toxicity, how is it working, the little bit of efficacy that they're talking about. So I'll just pull that paper up quickly. Right. Yeah. So I think they have taken about 25 patients in this study. 5 of them were control, and then again 15 were group 1 and 10 in group 2, or 5 in group 2, I think. So in group 1 they did a very low dosage, which is about just a second. Yeah, which is about 5.6 mg of resveratrol and copper of about 500 nanograms. And in the group 3, which is again 5 people, a higher dosage of resveratrol and same, almost same of copper. So what they have seen particularly is that all patients in the control group, which means the one that only received vehicle and absolutely no drug, they had, all of them have developed almost the oral mucositis. But then in the group 2, where the resveratrol was actually low dosage at 5.6 mg, 8 out of 20 people did not develop that. And they have also, in a secondary result, they have seen that inflammatory cytokines were reduced in the lower dosage of resveratrol rather than the higher dosage. So I think this is main, that these are main findings of the study that they have published, and also that they have started the R plus Cu combination, which is the resveratrol plus copper combination, 21 days before the chemotherapy started, and that had prevented some of the signs of post chemotherapy therapy side effects. So this is how the study
And
was placed entirely. And if you have any comments on that, we would happily listen to that.
can you go to the first paragraph? Scroll this up to the first paragraph. I would like to emphasize on the abstract, the first line, the last paragraph of the last few lines of the first paragraph. Cell-free cell-free chromatin particles can be inactivated by free radicals, which are generated when nutraceuticals like resveratrol and copper are administered orally. And we investigated if a combination of resveratrol and copper could reduce the transplant-related toxicities in an exploratory prospective dose escalation study. This is very important to understand. They are talking about two important things, and again, I'm emphasizing cell-free chromatin means the DNA particles that are circulating in the blood, which are being inactivated by the immune cells. And who are inactivating them? It is the immune cells that are inactivating them. It's important to understand that they are not getting magically inactivated. Because I think the missing gap in the story is how do they get inactivated? By this resveratrol. Okay, and that is what I would like to explain a little further here. And the other aspect is, please note that this is in transplant patients. Now, remember, in transplant patients, the biggest problem is your immune system acting in a very, very variable manner, and rejections and complications. The very fact that this particular study shows that there has been a reduction in toxicities also shows and reiterates the fact that resveratrol is somewhere helping the immune system. Now, that is where I'm again coming back to the simplicity of the explanation to understand that when a DNA and parts of the DNA's proteins are released from the cancer cells or the bad cells, the T cells or the policemen in the blood, the lymphocytes go and search them and find them. And this has been the whole story about how does the T cell, the policemen, come to find out who are the rogues and who are the good people. Because the power of the cancer cell, if you till today find out, is I think the biggest problem till in the last 1 century that we found is nobody has been able to fully clearly distinguish and say how does the immune system, which can pick up a virus or a dust particle when it enters the system and throw it out immediately or kill it, is not able to find out when a cancer cell which is so harmful is growing inside your own body. And this question has been pondering scientists for decades over the last few over the last half a century to more than a century. I think from on the first works of 1929 by Otto Warburg to almost now 100 years, almost completing. Now, this aspect, Darshit, I think what you brought out is very, very relevant for us to understand here as to how is it that these cells can be activated through our immune system. And one of the important mechanisms as we go on, we can discuss is PDL1 and PD1. I believe today there is enough of data to show that resveratrol is one of the most effective oral supplements naturally available that has shown data consistently to show that it is PDL1 and PD1 and PDL1 disruptor, which means it somewhere takes in a simplified manner PDL. What is this PDL1? PDL1 is a tumor related protein that is released by the tumor to go and block the PD1 receptor in the policeman, that is the lymphocyte. Now, a lymphocyte, which is the policeman, is all the time searching for any rogue cells. And when the cancer cell comes in front of it, it like a chameleon changes its color using this PDL1 and sends a message to the lymphocyte, which is the policeman, to say, look, I'm also a normal cell. So the T cell then allows it across the toll gate and says, okay, you can pass. Now, resveratrol is known to be that toll gate keeper, or what we call that immune checkpoint inhibitor. It's a checkpoint. So resveratrol becomes the checkpoint and says to the T cell and the lymphocyte, saying, no, he is not a normal cell, he is a rogue cell, because look, this is what I'm showing you, he is not a normal cell. And that's when the T cell says, okay, then we'll not let him pass, we'll kill him. I think this is what I believe is the true depth of the mechanism which resveratrol is possibly playing. And that's why using resveratrol, potentially the more amount of work in the last 1 decade that has happened on resveratrol and PD1, PDL1 is more commendable than just talking about chromatin alone.
No, absolutely. I think Dr. Vishal, that is a great insight because oftentimes, like when I was as a student as well, immunology is best well understood when there is a right examples to explain it. And I think you have just demonstrated that properly. That how resveratrol actually helps in PD1, PDL1 mechanism as an immune checkpoint inhibitor. So thank you so much for that. Now we will come down to the other study that has been done by Tata Memorial. That is where they actually describe the potential mechanism of how it is destroying the chromatin material coming from the tumor cell. So I'll just put that up across as well. This is, I think, the second study where they have initially described how it is causing or destroying the cell-free chromatin particles coming from the tumor cells. And here is where the question of the cure and all the other words related to cancer come into place as well. Because there are few important terms I think we need to clarify for people. First of all, cancer cure, cancer prevention, and chemo prevention. There are three different aspects, right? The ones that we come across on popular media as well. Cancer cure, first of all, is that removing the cancer. I mean, there is no cancer after that treatment is done. As far as my knowledge goes, there is not a proper treatment which has consistently shown an evidence for cancer cure. Cancer prevention, yes, there has been a lot of studies and equal number of controversies around which particular component is actually the best cancer prevention agent or onco-prevention agent. And then there is the final thing, which is chemopreventive, right? Usually a part of palliative care, as I would understand, because chemotherapy radiation often exerts a lot of side effects into the patients. And I think here the Tata Memorial is actually talking about chemo prevention rather than a cancer cure or cancer prevention per se in their study. So I think what they are trying to claim here is that first of all they have looked at hematological toxicity and non-hematological toxicity, which is I would assume that blood-related and non-blood related toxicologies. Now they have seen that after their dosing, they might not have reduced a lot of hematological toxicity, but in fact have worked on non-hematological toxicity, specifically talking about the hand and foot syndrome. So if you could just help us understand how this would affect the patient's quality of life, what is actually a hand-foot syndrome, and how reducing toxicity there could actually help the patients as well. So I think would love to know your insights on that.
So again, Darshit, two distinct aspects of the paper. Number one was the paper on multiple myeloma, which is related to blood cell cancers, the first paper. And that was related to transplant-related toxicities. The second paper, we are talking about a solid tumor, an epithelial cancer, which is a gastric cancer. Again, talking about chemotoxicities. And in this, the major toxicities, which are blood-related toxicities, were not reduced by this combination. There were other toxicities which are non-blood related. That means reduction of blood count, bone marrow, were all not changed by this particular approach. However, smaller aspects of toxicities were reduced, which is like vomiting, diarrhea, and other things, and nerve related, hand foot syndromes, and all, which are related to neurotoxicities. So, which means that yes, it has certain definite potentials to reduce minor toxicities in these conditions, and that both the studies have reiterated. However, these both studies also showed that there was no change in the overall survival or progression-free survival, which means in terms of cancer outcomes indirectly, there was no effect in terms of both of these when chemotherapy was being used. So that means I'm overall helping you interpret that when we give high dose chemotherapies, okay, and along with that, when we use resveratrol and look at how can it help in immune activation, maybe the dose of chemotherapy, if it is very high, the immune system is already so suppressed that it is difficult for the immune system to be activated by small doses alone. And that's why it's very important to understand the interplay that when heavy doses of chemotherapy suppress the immune system, having just small amounts of immune enhancers may not help, which is where people today search for in Ayurveda, or whether looking at alternative treatments, or looking at supplements, or looking at nutrition, or whatever. We all try to look at how do I boost the immune system, because we know that cancers, where chemotherapies can suppress the immune system, the bone marrow, and others. And these contradictions have been occurring for many years for us to work towards understanding less toxic chemotherapies, which are going to be more friendlier and targeting the cancer cells alone without targeting the normal cells. So both studies, I would say, reiterate the same fact that yes, there are less toxicities, but no change in the cancer outcomes in terms of patients living longer or having a lesser disease, a lesser progression-free survival means they having a lesser time for a recurrence, or lesser time for this. And this needs to be reiterated and understood in the preliminary studies, whether it is a blood cancer or whether it is a tumor. These are the two types of cancers we daily deal with, and in both of them, toxicities are reduced, but outcome has not changed.
Right. No, absolutely. Thank you so much for explaining it that completely. And I think since I think you raised a little bit point about how in the non-hematological, like a neurotoxicity aspect, resveratrol could be involved there. And I think mostly talking about neurotoxicity, so we would be talking about neurons, right, everywhere throughout the body, mostly brain. So resveratrol has a known capability to cross the blood-brain barrier. I think if there is a specific panel done on neurotoxicity going ahead in the future by Tata Memorial, this could actually help us establish that mechanism as well. That since resveratrol is able to pass through that blood-brain barrier, could also help with neurotoxicity, which is associated with the post-chemotherapy in cancer patients.
To
So I think
add to it, also the potential for exploring it in brain tumors.
right, because as I understand, brain tumor is one of the biggest problems, and there's very low survival rate, I think, with cancers like that.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So I think that's a good roundup on first discussing what is resveratrol, copper, the combination, and how it has been described in the current two studies published by Tata Memorial. And it does substantiate a lot of their claims. And I think it'd be interesting to look forward and see what other phase 3, phase 4 results as well. So thank you so much for
Darshit,
explaining it so
I
nicely. Yes,
Darshit,
please.
I would like to address the last part. Now that we've described resveratrol, we've described copper, we've described the combination, we've described what is chromatin, DNA, what is the immune system, how does it work, and talking about reducing toxicities and not changing cures for the time being. Can you show the last slide by Levy et al., which I was talking to you about, from the European group that actually talked about preventing cancers using resveratrol? I think we could wind up our discussion with that point.
Yeah.
Yes, Darshit. I think this is a very relevant paper, Darshit, which actually talks about how this group from Europe worked for 10 years to see in grape extracts where they actually got resveratrol, they were able to use it as an anti-cancer agent in vitro and vivo to actually prevent it, and also looked at patient data after that. And this study had about 370 patients, 369 to be precise, and about 600 control patients, which positively showed about how the reduction in risk happened in related to the cancer patients' risk for breast cancer when people took this for a longer period of time. And this was a 10-year study. Again, I wanted to re-emphasize that yes, resveratrol has been there for a very long time. Its potential in prevention of cancer has been explored and proven to certain extent, like in these case control studies. And the search for evidence continues. But one thing that we know, for example, in simple words, is today we know that good food, good antioxidants are known to prevent cancer. Antioxidants means that they reduce oxidative stress, free radicals, and that's how they are the scavengers or the cleaners. The municipal corporation of our blood, of our body, are these people who clean up all the garbage, segregate them, and throw it all out. And cancer cell should be identified among the garbage cells that need to be cleaned out of our system. And the immune system, the more vigilant it is, the more active it is, the more the more it is going to be preventing our tumors from coming up. And I want to talk about a very important point here, that in the world of cancer today, as we are evolving towards the new systems of immunotherapies and immune system, we are working with the Cambridge University and the British School of Immunology to run this programs on immunosphere, which actually talks about educating people on immunology for science students also. And I'm happy that immunosphere is a part of this discussion today, to importantly emphasize on how we need to shift our conversation in cancer from only just talking about killing the cancer cell to also activating the immune system. And Tata Memorial Group has today opened up that particular foray of discussions, talking about how we are trying to create that kind of a balance, where today a patient who comes with cancer and says that now that I have been treated with cancer and I want to prevent a recurrence. And in Indian scenario, 80% of them come at an advanced stage, stage 3 and 4. If this patient has a 30 to 40% chance of a tumor coming back and recurring in 2 years, and if this kind of a combination can be helpful, I'm sure we've changed a lot of game for the future of cancer patients. And we will all look forward to the data from Tata Memorial Hospital in the coming years, which Dr. Rajan Badwe has rightly put up in the media that it may come up in the next 5 years. And that's what people need to understand, that this kind of data will take time to evolve. Until that time, indiscriminate use of some of these things should not be done unless advised by the physician. And this is very, very crucial.
Absolutely. I think that last disclaimer was very important because these days a lot of people think that after following a clinical trial, they could just put it to use. But then understanding the nature of what were the participants, what was the study design, everything would be very important before we take that decision for ourselves. So, rightly said, one should always consult the respective physician who is taking care of them and then go for anything like this. But again, this is a very positive note that Tata Memorial has started with, and I think it will be very excited to see how the phase 3, phase 4 results look like in the coming 3 to 4 years, I guess, before the drug actually comes out. And it'd be interesting to see how it affects the chemo prevention part of the cancer. Dr. Vishal, indeed a very fruitful discussion, and thank you for the concluding remarks that you have given around the whole Tata Memorial study and resveratrol and copper and their roles in cancer. And in fact, decoding very important terminologies that people use very loosely around cancer. So I think thank you so much for that. And thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on this platform and helping us
Thank you.
educate people about better science. So I hope you have a great day, and I think we'll all be looking forward to keep hearing more and more from you about cancer and immunology.
Thank you.